everyone. Today's topic is about resective osseous surgery. So first we'll start with the introduction. So because of the periodontal disease, there will be lot of destruction of the tooth supporting bone. Okay, so because of the periodontal disease, there will be lot of bone deformities that are created. Okay, so these bone deformities should not be there. There should be a physiologic contour that should be present for the bone. Okay, so there should be a physiologic parabolic contour which should be created. Okay, so because if the bone contour is proper, then the gingiva, the overlying gingival soft tissues will also be proper. Okay, that's why we need proper contouring of the alveolar bone. So we have two kinds of surgeries, that is a regenerative surgery and resective surgery. Okay, so now this resective surgery is used for, it is a pocket reduction technique. Okay, so now we'll study in detail about this resective osseous surgery. Okay, so but why are we doing? Because of the periodontal disease, there is a lot of destruction of the tooth supporting bone, resulting in bone deformities. Okay, so now this bone loss can be either horizontal or it can be vertical, but most of the times it is usually a combination of horizontal and vertical bone loss. Okay, so now let's see the definition of osseous surgery. Okay, it is a procedure by which changes in the alveolar bone can be accomplished in order to get rid of deformities that are induced by the periodontal disease process or other related factors like exostosis and supraeruption. So, because of this osseous surgery, what are we doing? We are doing some changes in the alveolar bone so that the deformities, the bone deformities that are created due to periodontal disease or any other factors are eliminated. Okay. Next, what is the rationale? So why do we have to go with this resective surgery? So as I have mentioned, in order to create a physiologic contour, okay, it's a physiologic parabolic contour needs to be created. Okay, so we need to follow certain guidelines. Certain strict guidelines have to be followed, and the contouring of the alveolar bone has to be done. So that if contouring is proper, then obviously we can manage the gingival soft tissues. The gingiva will be sitting on the bone, right? So if we create the physiologic contour of the bone, then we can obviously manage the gingival soft tissues. Okay, so the major rationale of osseous resective surgery is based on the fact that discrepancies in the level and shapes of the bone and gingiva will predispose to the recurrence of the pocket depth post-surgically. So if there are any discrepancies in the level of the bone and gingiva, then obviously there will be recurrence of the pocket depth after the surgery. That's why we need to contour the alveolar bone. Okay. However, this concept is not universally accepted. And if we do the osseous surgery, what are we doing? We are removing some amount of bone, right? So there is a loss of radicular bone. Okay, so during the healing phase, there is loss of radicular bone. But in some situations, in some cases, there is need for resective osseous surgery. So even though there is loss of bone, in order to create the physiologic contour of the alveolar bone, we need to go with the resective osseous surgery in some cases. Okay, so what is the goal of osseous resective surgery? So the goal is to reshape the marginal bone to resemble that of the alveolar process undamaged by the periodontal disease. So what is our goal? We are reshaping the bone, marginal bone, in such a way that it will resemble the undamaged bone. Okay, before the periodontal disease, what is the bone? What is the shape of the bone? So we are trying to reshape the bone now such that it will resemble the undamaged bone. Okay, so alveolar process, how was it before? We are trying to create it now again. Okay, so this technique, this osseous resective surgery, is performed in combination with the apically positioned flaps. We have studied about apically positioned flaps in flap surgery topic, right? So this osseous resective surgery is done along with the apically positioned flap, and as we all know, apically positioned flap is a pocket reduction technique, right? So along with this apically positioned flap plus osseous surgery will eliminate the periodontal pocket depth, and it will improve the tissue contour. So we are removing the bone deformities. We are adapting the gingiva onto the bone such that there is an improved tissue contour and easily maintainable environment that is created. Okay, so now in order to shape the bone, in order to contour the bone, we need to know what is a normal bone morphology. We need to know how the bone looks when it is normal, when it is not diseased, right? So In the normal alveolar bone morphology, the interproximal bone is more coronal in position. If you can see, the interproximal bone is more coronal in position when compared to the facial or lingual bones. Okay, so it is pyramidal in form, right? So the facial bone is facial, or the labial or the lingual or palatal bone is more apical when compared to the interproximal bone. Both way it is same, right? Next, the form of the interdental bone is a function of tooth form and embrasure width. Okay, so depending upon the tooth shape and the embrasure, the space in between the two teeth is embrasure. So depending upon these two, the form of the interdental bone varies. So if the tooth is more tapered, then it is more pyramidal. Okay, then the bone in between is more pyramidal. Okay, for posteriors, what happens is it will be flat. It will not be pyramidal like this. It will be a bit flat. Okay, so the wider the embrasure, the more flattened is the interdental bone, mesiodistally and buccolingually. So if the embrasure is wide, then the interdental bone will be flat rather than pyramidal. Okay, so depending upon the tooth form and the width of the embrasure, the interdental bone morphology is varying. The last one is the position of the bony margin mimics the contour of the cemento-enamel junction. So this bony margin is resembling the contour of the cemento-enamel junction, right? If the tooth is like this is the cemento-enamel junction. So now the bone contour is also following the cemento-enamel junction, right? Next, the distance from the facial bony margin of the tooth to the interproximal bone crest is more flat in the posterior areas than the anterior areas. So as I've already told you, in the posteriors, it is flat, right? The interdental bone is flat rather than pyramidal. So now what he's saying is this is facial bone, right? This is interproximal bone. Okay, so this distance from the facial bony margin to the interproximal bone crest is greater in case of anterior areas, whereas since in the posterior areas it is flat. Okay, so there is less distance in between the facial bony margin and the interproximal bone crest in posterior areas, right? So in the anterior regions it is pyramidal, whereas in the posterior regions it is flat. Okay. Next, this scalloping of the bone on the facial and lingual or palatal is related to the tooth and root form as well as the tooth position within the alveolus. So how the tooth is positioned, what is the shape of the tooth, what is the shape of the root, so all will determine the shape of the bone that is present. Okay, so now in this osseous surgery we have two types. Okay, so it might be additive osseous surgery or it might be subtractive osseous surgery. So additive, as the name suggests, we are adding. So additive osseous surgery includes the procedures which are directed at restoring the alveolar bone to its original level. Okay, so alveolar bone is lost because of the periodontal disease. Okay, so but what we are doing is we are trying to restore the alveolar bone. Okay, we are trying to restore the periodontal attachment apparatus. Okay, we are trying to restore the attachment that is lost. So this is additive osseous surgery. So it is directed at restoring the alveolar bone to its original level, like this, that is before it is damaged. Okay. Next, in case of subtractive osseous surgery, it is designed to restore the form of pre-existing alveolar bone to the level that is present at the time of surgery or slightly more apical to this level. And what are we doing? So this is the bone level. So we are either trying to save this alveolar bone to this level, or we are removing some amount of bone. Okay, so we are making it slightly more apical when compared to the level that is present at the time of surgery. So when I have opened the flap, my alveolar bone is at some level. Okay, so if I'm trying to keep that bone at that level, or if I am trying to make it more apical, then it is called as subtractive osseous surgery. If I am trying to regenerate, if I am trying to restore the lost periodontal attachment apparatus, then it is called as additive osseous surgery. Okay, so now for the resective osseous surgery, we need to understand the indication. So which are the cases wherein we have to perform the resective osseous surgery? In case of one-walled angular defects, we'll talk about this one-walled angular defects later. So in case of one-walled angular defects, we need to go with this resective osseous surgery. If there are thick bony margins, we need to remove some amount of bone. So again, we need to perform the resective osseous surgery. If there are shallow craters, these are all the indications of the resective osseous surgery. Now, what are craters? Okay, so I have already explained this. If there is buccal and lingual bone and in between there is In between, there is loss of bone. Okay, so in between, interproximally, there is bone loss, but buccal and lingual bone walls are intact. So this is called as crater. So in case of shallow crater formations also, we need to go with the resective osseous surgery. Okay, now let's see the contraindications. Okay, so when should we not perform the resective osseous surgery? There are some contraindications, like if the patient is not stable. Okay, if the patient's health is not stable, then also we should not go for the surgery itself. We should not go for this resective osseous surgical procedures if the patient has impaired health, impaired physical or either emotional health of the patient, advanced age. Okay, another one is high caries index. High caries index also, we should not go for the surgery. Okay, other than these general principles, the other contraindications include presence of external oblique line in the mandibular molar area and maxillary sinus, which is very close to the osseous defect in root proximity. So we are working on this osseous defect. Okay, we are trying to shape the bone, we are trying to remove some amount of bone, we are trying to remove the bone deformities. So if this osseous defect that we are operating is close to the external oblique line, or if it is close to the maxillary sinus, then don't go with this procedure. Okay, and if there is periodontal pocket of more than 8 mm, okay, so if pocket is more than 8 mm after the initial therapy, after scaling and root planing, if it is more than 8 mm, then do not go for this resective osseous surgery. Okay. Next, the bottom of the osseous defect extends apically against multiple tooth root trunks. So it is very much apical. Okay, so in deep defects, we should not go with the resective osseous surgery. Remember this. Okay, and here the same point: the deep intrabony defect is more than 3 to 4 mm, or the bottom of the osseous defect is more than one half of the root length. So the defect is almost greater than one half of the root length. Okay, so the defect is either more than 3 to 4 mm, or the bottom of the osseous defect is more than one half of the root length. Okay, in such deep cases, do not go for the resective osseous surgery, because you will have to already more amount of bone is lost. Now you're removing even some amount of bone. Okay, so in deep cases, in deep defects, do not go with the resective osseous surgery. And if the tooth is having extended tooth mobility, then there's no point in doing the surgery. Already the tooth is mobile because of the loss of alveolar bone. The tooth is mobile, so you cannot compromise that. Okay, you cannot even compromise the situation. Next, we have to understand some terminology. So there are two important terminology. Those are the osteoplasty and ostectomy. Okay, osteoplasty. Plasty means shaping. Remember, plasty means shaping. Ectomy means removal. Okay, so osteoplasty means reshaping the bone. Okay, it is only shaping. We are only shaping. We are not removing any tooth supporting bone. Okay, so if we are only shaping the bone, then it is called as osteoplasty. Okay, ostectomy means it includes the removal of tooth supporting bone. Okay, in osteoplasty, we are only shaping the bone. We are not removing any tooth supporting bone. Whereas in ostectomy, we are removing the tooth supporting bone. Okay. Next, and other important terminology that we need to understand is about bone architecture. Okay, so in this we have different types. The first one is the flat architecture. So here you can see, so the bone that is covering the root areas here on the labial and lingual surfaces is called as radicular bone. Okay, in between two teeth, this bone is called as interdental bone. Okay, so interdental bone or the interproximal bone. So here, as you can observe in the picture, the interdental bone and the radicular bone are at the same height, isn't it? So this is called as flat architecture. Okay, so this is flat architecture. Now, what is ideal architecture? Ideally, how should the architecture be present? As we have seen, the interproximal bone should be coronal to the labial bone, isn't it? We have seen, right? So now, when the bone is consistently more coronal on the interproximal surfaces than on the facial or lingual surfaces, then it is called as ideal architecture. So not only the interproximal bone being more coronal than the labial bone, it should be more coronal. Okay, it should be more coronal when compared to the facial or lingual surfaces. Then it is called as ideal architecture. Now understand positive architecture. Okay, if positive architecture, the radicular bone is apical when compared to the interdental bone, isn't it? This is called as positive architecture. Now, what is ideal architecture? In ideal architecture, the radicular bone is more coronal when compared to the radicular bone. Okay, the interdental bone is more coronal when compared to radicular bone is ideal architecture. In positive architecture, this radicular bone is apical when compared to interdental bone, or else the interdental bone is coronal when compared to the radicular bone. If it is more coronal, then it is called as ideal architecture. Okay, this is the difference. Next, what is negative architecture? It is the opposite of positive architecture. So here, the interdental bone is apical when compared to the radicular bone. Okay, if interdental bone is apical when compared to the radicular bone, it is called as negative architecture. If interdental bone is coronal when compared to the radicular bone, then it is called as positive architecture. If it is more coronal, then it is called as ideal architecture. Okay, if both the interdental bone and radicular bone are at the same level, then it is called as flat architecture. Okay, hope it's clear. Now we'll move on to another important terminology, that is regarding the walls. Okay, so depending upon the number of walls present, okay, so there is a classification of osseous defects. Okay, depending upon the number of walls present, remember this. Okay, so 3-walled defect means 3 walls are present. Usually what students think is 3-wall defect means, since it is defect, they think that 3 walls are lost. No, 3 walls are present. Okay, then it is 3-wall defect. So here, if you can observe in the picture, so this mesial wall is lost. So there is distal. So this mesial wall is lost. Okay, so we have the distal wall, facial wall, and the lingual wall. Okay, so the mesial wall is lost. We have the facial wall, lingual wall. We have the facial wall, distal wall, and the lingual wall. Okay, here the mesial wall is lost. Okay, so now how many walls are present? 3 walls are present, right? 1 wall is missing. So now if 3 walls are present, it is called as a 3-walled defect. Okay, so now let's talk about 2-wall defect. So now here, if you can see, mesial wall is not there, right? Mesial wall is not there. Now facial wall is also not there, right? What are all the walls that are present? Distal wall and the lingual wall are present, right? So now this is a 2-walled defect. 2 walls are only present. Okay, so now coming to 1-wall defect. Okay, we have seen that indication is 1-wall defect, right? So now 1-wall defect. Okay, so in 1-wall defect, only 1 wall is present. As you can see here, distal wall is only present. We don't have the lingual wall, we don't have the facial wall, we don't have the mesial wall, right? So this is only 1 wall is present, so it is called as 1-wall defect. So now here we can see the combined osseous defect. Combined osseous defect means, so here, if you see the apical half, so if you divide this into 2 halves, occlusal half and apical half, in the apical half, you can see that there is facial wall. Okay, some facial wall is present. There is distal wall, there is lingual wall, right? So in the apical half, it is 3-wall defect, right? Whereas if you see the occlusal half, then there is only lingual wall and there is distal wall, right? So in the occlusal half, it is a 2-wall defect. So in such cases, so apically it is one kind of defect, occlusally it is one kind of defect. Okay, so this kind of defect is called as a combined type of osseous defect, right? So usually it will be combined type of osseous defect only. Okay, so if 3 walls are present, it's a 3-wall defect. If 2 walls are present, it's a 2-wall defect. If 1 wall is only present, then it's a 1-wall defect. So here 1 wall might be any wall. Just for the purpose of representation, he has given that only distal wall is present. So you may have only the mesial wall, and the distal wall, facial and lingual wall might be absent. So depending upon the number of walls that are present, we will be classifying the osseous defects. Okay, so now let's see what are all the instruments that are used in order to do this resective osseous surgery. So in these instruments, we have the rotary instruments and we have the hand instruments. Okay, in the rotary instruments, we have different kinds of carbide burrs. Okay, so we have different kinds of burrs that are used. Usually the rotary instruments are used for the osteoplasty. That means we are using the rotary instruments for the shaping purposes. Okay, whereas hand instruments are used for the ostectomy procedures. That means for the removal. Okay, so in the hand instruments, we have the rongeurs. Okay, so these are the rongeurs. So these rongeurs are used for trimming, recontouring the alveolar bone, and they are also used for the gross tissue removal. And we have the interproximal files, which are used with the pull and push application. So what are the interproximal files that we know? Those are the Sugarman and the Schlugerman file, isn't it? We have seen in the instruments class, right? Sugarman and the Schlugerman files, right? So these are the interproximal files that can be used. Next, we have the Rhodes back action chisel that is used with the pull stroke. We have the Oskinbain chisel, which is used for the reshaping the bone. Okay, so we have the hand instruments and the rotary instruments. So now I'll just give you a brief idea of what is osseous surgery. Okay, just step by step. So first, here we see that there is a bony defect, right? So now what we have to do first, we need to give incision, we need to reflect the flap, right? We know these two steps. So here we have given the incision and the flap is retracted, okay, reflected. So now what we can see this bone defect, right? So after the flap is reflected, we need to do the thorough degranulation. Okay, we need to perform thorough debridement. After thorough debridement, you will be able to view this bony defect. So now here we are using the rotary instrument and we are shaping the bone defect. Okay, we have shaped the bone defect. Now after that, the gum tissue. So here just layman terms were given in this. So the flap is placed back into its position. Okay, the flap is coapted and then suturing is done. Okay, this is a post-operative picture. Okay, so in the resective osseous surgery also, the initial steps are same. You're giving the incision, you're reflecting the flap, thorough debridement is done, then you are operating on the bone. Okay, so now there are certain steps in resective osseous surgery. These sequential steps are very, very important. Okay, so in these steps, there are 4 important steps. Okay, so these are the vertical grooving, radicular blending, flattening the interproximal bone, and gradualizing the marginal bone. Vertical grooving, radicular blending, flattening interproximal bone, and gradualizing marginal bone. You need to remember these steps in the same order. Okay, you should not jumble, you should remember these steps in same order, and there's an important MCQ that is asked based on these steps, based on the sequential steps. Okay, so now the first step is vertical grooving. Okay, vertical grooving means, so here you can see, so this is the bone. Okay, this is the bone in the first picture which you are seeing. This is the bone morphology that we have seen after the flap reflection. So now what we are doing is we are giving the grooves. This is called as vertical grooving. So why are we giving these grooves? Okay, so this grooving is done in order to reduce the thickness of the alveolar housing. So it's thick bone. Okay, so in order to reduce the alveolar housing, we are doing this vertical grooving. So vertical grooving is done in order to reduce the thickness of the alveolar housing, to provide the prominence to the radicular aspects of the teeth. So in order to provide the prominence to the radicular aspects of the teeth, we are doing the vertical grooving. Next, in order to provide a continuity from the radicular portion to the interproximal portion. So in order to provide this continuity from the radicular portion to the interproximal portion, we are doing the vertical grooving. And for this, rotary instruments are used. Why rotary instruments are used for this purpose? So remember an important point. The first 2 steps of the vertical grooving and radicular bending, these 2 are the osteoplasty procedures. Okay, the first 2 steps are the osteoplasty. Bony margin in order to reduce the bulk of the alveolar housing. We are doing this.
Can you please repeat the slide again? Can you please repeat the slide again?
From this one, sir, indications?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sir. Suddenly it got disconnected. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So now let's see the indications of this vertical grooving. Okay, so in the vertical grooving, as I have already told you, if there is thick bony margin, in order to reduce the bulk of it, we are doing the vertical grooving. Okay, so this is the first point that we have seen. Okay, to reduce the thickness of the alveolar housing. So the indications of the vertical grooving include in case of thick bony margin, or if there are any craters, shallow craters. Okay, so not deep craters, shallow craters are present, then we can go with this vertical grooving procedures. And where are these contraindicated? Where is vertical grooving contraindicated? In case of areas with close root proximity. So there is thin alveolar housing. So if there is thick alveolar housing, you can put grooves and you can remove the bulk. If the alveolar housing is already thin, then where do you put these grooves? Okay, so in case of areas where there is thin alveolar housing and in areas which are more close to the root, you should not do the vertical grooving. Okay, the advantages here, osteoplasty is performed. So maximum amount of shaping is done, and minimal ostectomy, we are removing less amount of bone, we are shaping. Shaping is more when compared to the removal. Okay. Next is radicular blending. Okay, so remember, so here we have placed grooves like this, right? Grooves on the radicular and interproximal area. Now what we'll do is we will blend these grooves. Okay, we are blending. Okay, blending the area. Okay, so yeah, one second. So here we have placed these grooves, right? These grooves. So now we are blending this area. Okay, so we are blending the area. So this is called as radicular blending. So extension of the vertical grooving to gradualize the bone over the entire radicular surface. Now we are extending this vertical grooving and we are shaping the bone. We are gradualizing the bone over the radicular surface and the interproximal surface. So now after radicular blending, what we can see? We can see a smooth blended surface for a good flap adaptation. So we are nicely blending it so that the flap adaptation is good. Okay. So as I've already told you, the first two steps of the resective osseous surgery are purely osteoplastic procedures. So only shaping is done. So vertical grooving and radicular blending are purely osteoplastic procedures. Whereas the remaining two steps, that is a flattening of the interproximal bone, as we can see now, and gradualizing the marginal bone. These last two steps are the ostectomy techniques. Okay, first two steps of the resective osseous surgery or osteoplasty techniques, and the last two steps are the ostectomy techniques. Okay. So now, in case of flattening of interproximal bone, we are removing small amounts of supporting bone. Isn't it? Since this is ostectomy technique, we are removing some amount of bone. So when are we doing this flattening of interproximal bone? So when the interproximal bone levels vary horizontally. So the interproximal bone levels are not at the same level. Okay, so the buccal bone is higher when compared to the lingual bone. Then what we will do? We will remove this buccal part of bone and we will make it equal. Okay, so when the interproximal bone levels are varying horizontally, then we will do this. We will remove the some amount of interproximal bone. This is called as flattening of the interproximal bone. And in case of one wall interproximal defects or the hemiseptal defects also, we will go with the flattening of the interproximal bone. So here you can see, so if this is the defect, okay, so here this is the crater. Okay, this is the crater. The buccal wall and the lingual wall are intact, and in between we have the crater. Now how can I reduce this crater? So I can remove the whole buccal bone, okay, and I can shape this like this, or I can even remove this lingual bone, and I can, this is called as ramping. Actually removing only one side of the bone is called as ramping. Okay, so now I can remove this chunk of buccal bone, or else I can remove the small amount of lingual bone. Now how do I decide which bone to remove? So wherever it is less, I will be going with that side of bone removal. Okay, so here if I do it on the lingual side, there is less amount of bone that needs to be removed. So now I'll go with the removal of bone on this side. So if I am going with the bone on the buccal side, it is more, right? So wherever it is minimal, we need to go with that side. Okay. Next is gradualizing the marginal bone. So this is also ostectomy technique, but here we are gradualizing, we are leveling the whole bone, and here the bone removal is minimal, and this gradualizing is done in order to provide a sound base for the gingival tissue. So after the gradualizing marginal bone, there is a sound base such that the gingival tissue will come and adapt. Okay. So next is, yeah. So if we are not gradualizing, okay, so if we are not removing the bony discrepancies that are present, then it will result. So suppose if the bone is irregular, if we are not removing these bony discrepancies, what will happen once we place the gingival tissue onto the bone? So there will be some areas which are irregular, right? So failure to remove the small bony discrepancies on the gingival line angles allow the tissue to rise at a higher level than the base of the bone. Okay, so what happens if some bony discrepancies are not removed? Your gingiva will fall onto that bone only, that discrepancies of the bone. Okay, so this will raise the tissue to a higher level. Again, if these bony discrepancies are not reduced, there will be recurrence of the pocket tip. Okay, isn't it? That is the main reason that we are performing the resective osseous surgery. Okay, so this ultimately, so if we are not removing these bony discrepancies and all, it will result in the process of recession, and subsequent pocket reduction is incomplete. So we cannot, that will not result in the pocket reduction. And as I have already told you, the last two steps of the resective osseous surgery, that is the flattening of interproximal bone and gradualizing the marginal bone, are the ostectomy techniques, right? So now here we can have a idea of what is being done. Okay, so here this is the alveolar bone morphology that is present. Okay, so now here we are creating the grooves. This is called as vertical grooving. Okay, here it is done with the rotary instruments, right? So this step, this is the vertical groove, vertical grooving. Okay, so now here we are blending the bone, right? So we are doing the radicular blending. So now you can understand, after creating grooves, we are nicely blending the bone. Okay, so vertical grooving, radicular blending. Okay, next one is the flattening of the interproximal bone. So here the interproximal bone is, we are flattening. So when are we doing the interproximal flattening? When the whenever we performing the flattening of the interproximal bone, when the interproximal bone levels are varying. So if one bone, if the buccal side bone is at a higher level when compared to the lingual bone, so in order to level that, or if there is any one wall defect, that means only one wall is present, all the other walls are lost, then we will remove this bone. So interproximal bone is removed. This is called as flattening of the interproximal bone. Okay, next, last one is gradualizing the marginal bone. So later we are providing a smooth base to the, we are providing a smooth base for the gingival tissue to fall in place. Okay, so finally we are creating a good physiologic contour, right? Next. Yeah, next we'll talk about an important thing called as widow's peaks. Okay, so sometimes what happens is there will be some peaks of bone that will remain at the line angles. Okay, so there will be peaks of bone at the line angles, especially at the facial and lingual or palatal line angles. So these peaks of bone are called as widow's peaks. Okay, so as I have already told you, these bony discrepancies have to be removed. Otherwise, if these discrepancies are not removed, then my gingival tissue, then my gingiva will fall onto that bony discrepancy, right? Fall onto that peaks of bone. So then what happens during the healing, the soft tissue that we are suturing, okay, this soft tissue will bridge the embrasure from most coronal height of the bone. Okay, so my soft tissue will not adapt properly. So that is why you should remove all the bony discrepancies that are present. Okay, next, as I have told you, the one wall angular defect is the indication for this resective osseous surgery. Now we'll see how this one wall angular defect is managed. So here you can see that it is a one wall defect. Only one wall is present. Remaining everything walls are lost. Okay, one wall, it's a one wall defect. So here the defect is reduced by ramping. So you are ramping. Okay, so a very important point is one wall angular defect is treated by, okay, it is the defect is reduced by ramping. Okay, so here the defect is present, so now we are reducing the defect and we are maintaining an ideal environment for the patient to maintain. Okay, so for the patient to maintain his oral hygiene, so we are creating an ideal environment by performing the ramping. Okay, next, selection of technique. No, so I have told you about one wall, two wall, three wall defects. So in what kind of defect, what is the technique that you will select? Okay, so we all know this. One wall angular defects usually need to be recontoured surgically. So we'll go with the resective osseous surgical technique. Whereas three wall defects, especially if three wall defect means three walls are present. So three walls are present. So usually they can be successfully treated with the new attachment procedures and bone reconstruction procedures. So usually we'll go with the additive kind of surgical techniques. Okay, whereas in case of two wall angular defects, that means only two walls are present, so we can go with the either method. That means we can go with the resective method or the regenerative method. So what how do we select? It will be depending upon the depth, width and the configuration of the bony defect. So depending upon these three factors, we will see whether we have to go with the additive osseous surgery or the subtractive osseous surgery. Okay, so except for the one wall defects and wide shallow two wall defects and interdental craters, all the osseous defects are treated with the objective of obtaining the optimal repair by natural healing process. So for one wall defects, for wide shallow two wall defects and for interdental craters, we are going with the resective osseous surgical techniques. The rest of the things, what are we trying to do? We are trying to regenerate. Okay, we are going with the additive surgical techniques. Okay, so now let's study about basic rules of osseous surgery. So rule 1 is a full thickness mucoperiosteal flap should be raised, isn't it? So we are performing the osseous surgery, we are working on the bone. So in order to work on the bone, I need to see the bone, right? So a full thickness flap has to be raised. Rule 2, 2A. Okay, so here the scalloping of the flap should anticipate the final underlying osseous contour. So my flap should be in such a way that it follows the osseous contour. So my underlying bone contour. So I should make my flap in such a way. I should scallop the flap in such a way that it will resemble the underlying osseous contour. Okay, so this scalloping is more prominent anteriorly and it will decrease posteriorly. What is rule 2B? The scalloping of the flap should reflect the patient's own healthy gingival architecture. So scalloping should be such a way that it should resemble the healthy gingival architecture. Okay. Rule 2C. The degree of the tissue and bone scalloping is reduced as the interproximal area becomes broader as a result of bone loss. So if the interproximal area is broad, you need to reduce the bone scalloping. Okay. So as the interproximal area becomes broad, your tissue scalloping and the bone scalloping should be reduced. Next, osteoplasty generally precedes ostectomy. So first we need to go with the shaping, then only ectomy, then only we need to go with the removal. So first we need to go with the conservative procedures, right? So that's why first shaping has to be done. First osteoplasty has to be done. After that ostectomy has to be done. Okay. Next, osseous resective surgery, whenever possible, should result in a positive osseous architecture. So always we need to go with the positive osseous architecture. What is positive osseous architecture? The interproximal bone is at coronal level when compared to the facial or labial bone. Never you should go with the reverse architecture or the negative architecture, right? We always need the positive architecture. Okay, so whenever possible, we should strive for the positive osseous architecture. Next, high-speed rotary instrumentation should never be used adjacent to the teeth for the fear of nicking and damaging the teeth, and should always be used with a generous spray. So whenever we are using the rotary instrumentation, there should be good amount of copious amount of spray has to be there. Okay, so we need to usually we use the irrigation saline. We will be using along with the saline irrigation. Okay, and one more thing he mentioned is it should be avoided adjacent to the teeth. So high speed, if you are doing it adjacent to the teeth, what will happen? There are possibilities of damaging the teeth, right?